Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. Bitcoin continues to power higher. I'm going to primarily focus on Bitcoin in today's video. We're going to dissect the chart. We'll look at a couple different time frames, as well as some next level targets to be watching on the upside and near-term resistance. It's been quite the move here that we've seen here over the last couple of days. After breaking over that 7,600 level, just continues to power higher. The last several candles here on this 4-hour chart, big green candles coming in with pretty good volume. So the bull case continues. So let's get to it here. Looking at the Node Insider's metrics here, the 4-hour trading bot status has been long here since the weekend. Went long again. That continues to prove well. And as I mentioned in the live stream yesterday, for those of you that were watching, I said the daily strategy had either been short or flat for some time. It wouldn't go long until price crossed over that 7,900 8K level, and here we are seeing that over 8,100. And I just saw that email alert go through to the subscribers showing that the daily strategy had also finally flipped over to long. So all in all, very bullish. Clearly the metrics are showing strong. And look at the trending list. This is BTC pairs, so alt BTC pairs. Not much on the list right now. Dragon Chain, there's a name from yesteryear, but other than that, not a whole lot on the list right now, as most of the alts have been no match for this latest BTC rally, as we'll see shortly when we look at some of the dominance charts here. But let's get back to the chart here. What I want to focus on first is the 4-hour chart, and then I'll flip over to the daily chart and use that as a little bit of a measurement tool for setting the targets and looking at where do we go here next. But on the daily chart, on the 4-hour chart, the key level that I continue to talk about was that $7,600 level, and that was just prior resistance for several attempts. And when we look at the daily chart, this was also forming a big picture reversal pattern. As we saw, we had that shakeout last week, quickly recovered above that 71, and so for me that was the initiation of a short-term trade on margin. I did scale out of that yesterday into that level, but I kept a core position here long, re-entered that here in this most recent dip that we saw to that 10 EMA on that 4 hours. So notice that blue line here on this chart, that's the 10 exponential moving average, and price has just been tracking, and that's kind of your near-term moving average. And so we had that little bit of a dip earlier. I was thinking we would have quickly breached 7,700 and then reversed, but it came down to around 77.25, and then quickly the volume started to come back in, just not let up. So once we saw 7,800 hit, decided to jump back on with some additional leverage on that position, and so far so good. Let's see how that one continues. Now the thing to note here is the volume patterns. These big green candles that do finish near the high of the candle are associated with some pretty strong volume, signifying that the buying pressure just continues. That could also be some short sellers getting squeezed, maybe trying to time this and look for that reversal, and that just has not proven to be a profitable strategy right now. The momentum to the upside is just so strong, especially after clearing that. And I kept talking about the bigger term picture. 4-hour chart, it was kind of indeterminate. I thought maybe we'd see a pullback from that 7,600, but I said on the daily time frame, this was really what was exciting. This big consolidation that we were seeing for the last 6 weeks finally breaking through, and it broke through on well above average volume on that daily chart and continues to march higher. So where do we go from here? Now near term, it is a little extended. So let me go back to that 4-hour chart here real quick. I'll add in the RSI and the MACD. You can see the RSI, not crazy high levels, but it is up here in the high 70s now. So it's certainly a little bit stretched, but it's just continuing to ride along that 10 EMA. If you go to the shorter time frames, the 1-hour view, you do see the RSI peaking here around that 80 to 85 level, and we're approaching that level again. So a pause like we've seen here in the past would be ideal, but the momentum certainly is strong. The shorts are getting smacked here, and many of the alts are getting hit pretty hard versus BTC. So going back to the daily chart, where do we go from here? There's a couple of ways to look at this. The first one here is I got this 7,600 level marked out. That's just a pure support resistance level. Going out, zooming out a little bit, I've got another line marked out here around that 8,600 level, and that's just looking at prior resistance. We had that big breakout, pulled back, couldn't hold, so that's going to be the next big target on the way up. So high end would be around 8,600 just from a pure support and resistance level. Now, if we look at it from the Fibonacci retracements level, meaning I'm going to just do this wick to wick. So the wick high that we saw here on October 26th, which was around 10,500, to the wick low, which we saw here on December 18th, around 6,400. Looking at some retracement levels, I've already got it highlighted here, but we can see that this little box here, that 50% retracement level, is around 84.80 or so, give or take, depending on the exchange you're looking at. But just shy of 8,500. That's the number that I've been personally looking at, was around 8,500 for the next upside target once we broke over this level. It was 7,600, then 78, then after that a little bit of a gap, and we're kind of in this middle zone here. Now, the other thing to note is if you do a measured move on this, and this is just a pattern-based measured move, so assuming you're calling this an inverse head and shoulder, and that's certainly debatable, but the signature is there. You have the three dips, the higher low, so this would be the right shoulder. The neckline is slanted, so your breakout point is not that 7,600 level, but would be a little bit lower. And let me draw that here so you guys can see what I'm looking at. So this little dip here with the rally afterwards would be that left shoulder. The most recent dip there would have formed the head, and then your most recent dip here that we saw last week would form that right shoulder. And if we did that, and using this pattern extrapolate a measured move target, the way you do that is you take the depth of the head and you extrapolate that out to the breakout point. And if we call that the breakout point, notice where that lands. That top of the arrow goes right to that 50% retracement, just shy of that 8,600 level, so around that 8,500. So that's really the next zone, if you will. It's not a precise number, but that's the next target zone that I'm looking at for this rally on the daily chart. So around 8,450 to around 8,600, give or take, is what I'm going to be watching before we see a little bit more of a pause. If you pull back the RSI onto this chart, you can see that if it got there, it would still have room to run. So before it started getting into that overbought territory. So the technicals certainly support it. It is a little stretch from the daily 10 EMA at this point. We could see a few inside bars here form within this current daily candle range before it continues to rally, but that's your next near-term target. So a couple of different ways to look at that, but they're all kind of pointing to that mid 8K range. Above that, the 618 retracement takes you almost to 9K. Nice round number there. I'm not so bullish that it really gets there in one fell swoop. Certainly we've seen that happen before with some crazy, these crazy spikes that we've seen, but that's typically not the way it goes. You'll get a pause along the way and then maybe another secondary leg up. So near-term action, that's what I'm looking at. I know there's a lot of FOMO out there, those that maybe took profits too early or were not in the trade at all. It's certainly reasonable to feel like you're chasing here, and it's hard to just watch the price go up like this very strongly if you don't have any exposure to that trade. So BTC continues to look strong all in all. Positive action, bullish volume patterns. I would like to see a little bit of a breather here personally, but hey, let the trend continue. The trend is your friend. On the downside, that 8K, that 78K number is really that first support. That would lines up with the 10 and the 22 EMA. And then if it really decides to take a dip back, don't want to see it get much below that 7,600 level. You could see a little bit of a throwback to that level on the daily chart and then a rally higher. I think there's a lot of people waiting on the sidelines hoping for a dip down to that zone, so would likely be front run if that did happen. But that's your first near-term support if price decides to start pulling back in again. If we do a retracement level from that perspective, assuming this is the high, I'm not saying that's the swing high, the 382 level puts you around 7,700, 50% just shy of that 76. So lines up pretty well with that perspective. Let's look at the BTC dominance though, because some of these alts have just been no match for the Bitcoin spike that we've seen here. And just quickly cycling through, here's Ethereum, had just broken out of a little bit of a base and was looking pretty good, and then just quickly retreating, maybe finding a low here near term, but the last couple of days getting hit pretty hard. XRP, another big cap name that drives the BTC dominance, did have some news driven rally yesterday, and we looked at this one on the live stream, and I hope you guys did not chase that tall green candle here on that daily, it has fully given that back completely, just a quick smackdown. And that's the thing with those moves that are just news driven, pump driven. They're generally not organic. They're not organic breakouts. There's not a lot of follow through on them. And the question is always, are they a flash in the pan move, or is it the start of a next big rally? And the answer comes with how they consolidate. If this would have sat tight and started to form a little bit of a base up here, a bull flag, something like that, let the moving averages catch up, then yeah, the potential for another leg up would have been there. But this just got hit hard, tons of volume on the way down, just not bullish action at all. Looking at Litecoin, BTC was holding up better than most, but still getting hit pretty hard here on this last couple of candles. Seen some volume coming in. We were looking at Decentraland, so looking at Mana. Yesterday, I was talking about the potential for a cup and handle, but I also warned that if that dipped too far, would quickly look like a double top. Now it's very clearly looking like a double top. If you look at the neckline there, prices really dropped right below. Big double top forming here on Mana BTC on that 4-hour chart. EOS was another one that I was watching, hoping that this would have sat tight while Bitcoin rallied, and didn't. Just, again, versus BTC, so many of those names getting hit really hard. And we can see that in the dominance. A couple of names that hold out pretty good. IOTA holding up relatively well versus Bitcoin. So, you know, there has been some pullback here, but all in all, not getting hit quite as hard. Link also seeing some good relative strength here in the near term. But if we look at the BTC dominance, this is the 4-hour view. It was pulling in here over the last couple of days as some of those big cap names were rallying versus Bitcoin, names like Bitcoin Cash and XRP and even a little bit of ETH and EOS. And that has quickly been reversed with Bitcoin rallying so strongly, up 7-8% in the last 24 hours, as most of those alts have pulled back. The ideal scenario is always alts hold their ground while Bitcoin rallies, and then they outperform while Bitcoin pauses. But as we've seen here for most of the last year, that's just not been the case, unfortunately. Generally, you see the alts get hit pretty hard when Bitcoin takes off, and then when Bitcoin pulls in and has a big pullback, the alts get hit hard again. And so it's been very tricky from that perspective. We have not seen an across-the-board altcoin rally. We've seen a few days here and there of pretty strong moves, but it's generally been a very judicious kind of pick your names wisely, because you'll get these names that randomly will move up and down versus Bitcoin, but we haven't seen a big across-the-board altcoin move. Altcoin season, as many like to call it. Will we see those? I think we will this year. Will it come before or after the halvening is anyone's guess, but I think they're well overdue for some, longer gains versus BTC rather than these quick couple of day moves that we tend to see. So for now, it continues to be the Bitcoin show. BTC remains the strongest name out there, as has been the case for some time. And this is positive all around, just because we've seen this big reversal pattern starting to form some support here, and it's nice to finally see the price finally take out some near-term resistance and show some good strength. How high does this go is anyone's guess. Keep in mind the macro picture, the weekly charts and the monthly charts, if you want to look at that, are still very much in this big downtrend. And in fact, this current price rally is starting to bump up at the upper end of that price channel again. So it's at a little bit of a critical juncture. We'll see if it can take that level out. Does it hold above that is going to be what we're going to be watching here over the next week or two. But for now, good. If you have been on this, keep an eye on that pullback. See if we can get a little bit of a support forming here, some sideways action. And that's going to be it for today, guys. I will be back on the mic tomorrow. Maybe I'll do a live stream. If not, at least a quick video update. Thanks for watching as always. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone.